the joys of live streaming and technology. So, all right, here we go. All right, welcome again to our Bible class. We're continuing to look at some of these Sunday school stories that don't always appear in the lectionary. And today we're looking at Gideon. Now, why is Gideon important? Well, so one commentary I looked at described him this way. He starts his career as a coward, then becomes a conqueror, but ends his career as a compromiser. And so we'll see. We tend to focus in on that middle part, but again, reminded of the humanity of these people, the flaws that they have as well as their faith. And part of why Gideon's important, more space is dedicated to Gideon in the book of Judges, 100 verses, than any of the other judges. So that kind of means if they're spending more time on him, there must be something important about him going on. So, and we'll see. And then again, context for Judges, what's going on as we're looking at Gideon as a judge. During this time, there's no king in Israel. People are doing what's right in their own eyes. The people can't seem to work together, and they're in bondage to various enemies. Whereas as I mentioned in the sermon, in Judges, they go through the cycle of sin, cycle of apostasy. Everything's okay at first, but then they fall into sin and idolatry. And then they're enslaved, oppressed, invaded. Then they cry out to God for forgiveness and redemption, for rescue. God raises up a judge. And again, we call them judges. They're not people in black robes. Sometimes I almost think they're more like, that Judge Dredd movie where the sci-fi police officers shooting all the bad guys kind of thing. But it's more like a redeemer. A hero, someone gets raised up. Israel's delivered, saved, and then they worship God because he saved them. But then it doesn't take too long before they go back, and that cycle keeps repeating and repeating. The cycle keeps going because it's, they're human. I think that's at least part of it. Part caused sin. Part of it too, if you remember from last week, when Pastor Mark talked about Joshua and Jericho and things, what were the people supposed to have done? They were supposed to kill all the inhabitants in the land. Why? Because they're doing these horrible things, and they will lead the people astray. They didn't follow that direction, so then they're still surrounded by all these people and all their false gods, and they keep getting influenced the other way. Yeah.
What I find very interesting is Israel is always delivered.
Right. Yep.
Just like us in our cycle.
Yep.
But it seems like people want something finite to look at, and they
Right.
fall into idolatry.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Because again, this is there's no king. This is before Jerusalem's been conquered. There's no temple. There's just the tabernacle with the ark in it, and so maybe they're looking for something. Well, sure, God's with us, but we don't have a physical side of him do it. Whereas if we have this idol that we're sacrificing to, or this idol that we do these rituals to make things happen, that seems to make more sense to us than just trusting in God. And so or kind of a syncretism, let's cover all bases. Yes, we'll worship God, but we'll worship Baal too, just to make sure that our bases are covered, and we're going to make sure we get rain. So, all right. So this is beginning an introduction to the story of Gideon is Judges 6. Could someone read this for us? And I stop every so often through verses, so you don't. But
The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian overpowered Israel. And because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains, and the caves and the strongholds. For whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. They would encamp against them and devour the produce of the land, as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, and no sheep or ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents. They would come like locusts in number. Both they and their camels could not be counted, so that they laid waste the land as they came in. And Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the people of Israel cried out for help to the Lord.
All right. So that'd be kind of depressing. You plant and harvest time. Well, yep. Because you can't really hide a field that you've planted. Easy for them to figure out where it is, and they'll come devour it and take everything and then go away. All right. Any other thoughts on this context that we're setting up? All right. All right. So then we get to the call of Gideon. Could someone read this for us?
Now the angel of the Lord came and sat down under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." And Gideon said to him, "Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, then why then has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up out of from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian." And the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do I not send you?" And he said to him, "Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." And the Lord said to him, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man." And he said to him, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you who speak with me. Please do not depart from here until I come to you and bring out my present and set it before you." And he said, "I will stay till you return."
All right. So again, where do we meet Gideon at a wine press? And what's he doing at the wine press? Yeah, threshing wheat, grain, trying to hide from the Midianites. Let's see, do I have to say? So the comparison. So normally threshing floor, big flat spot. So you have more room to work, depending on how they were doing it. Sometimes you had a big open space, so then you could just throw the grain up, and the chaff would blow away, and the grain would fall down. Wine presses, though, smaller, more enclosed, more thing. And again, if you're looking for grain, you're more likely to look for grain in a threshing floor than in a wine press. So kind of a smart idea, but again shows that Gideon's not trying to fight the Midianites. He's trying to hide from them. And so when the angel says, "Greetings, O mighty man of valor," like, really? You sure about this? And Gideon is still kind of hesitant about that too. And Gideon's also hesitant because, again, they've been oppressed for 7 years at this point, and so Gideon's asking well, okay, we've been oppressed. Where is God? Where is the God who saved us? Where is the God who promised to rescue us? We've been oppressed now. Why haven't you saved us? The Lord's forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian. And then, well, I'm picking you to rescue Israel. Don't I send you? I will be with you. So again, given that kind of sending, calling, is able to give Gideon things. But of course, Gideon asks for a sign, and this will also be a recurring theme of Gideon. Again, held up as a hero of the faith, but he seems to need a lot of help for his faith. And so this first one is he's told the angel to wait, and he's going to make something and asking for a sign. And so the sign is Gideon ends up making a meal, and the angel is able to cook it without starting a fire. The fire passes through it and things, and so then Gideon goes, "Oh, this must really be an angel. I guess you're really calling me." So, all right. Any other thoughts, questions, comments on that? That's a good question. I don't remember whether it says he lives another 40 years after all of this. So I think maybe mid-20s, but I'm not 100% sure. That's a good question, though, and I don't know that we're given a clear answer there. But
Probably he was younger, because if you prove for God doing all this, it's because you're still kind of foolish in your thinking.
maybe.
Once you've wised up, you're supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some of that. Yeah, if you eventually wise up, but at the same time, I mean, a lot of times when people are called by God to do things, they spend a lot of time going, "You sure you have the right person? Really?" And even Moses is 80 when burning bush appears to him. I mean, Zechariah is old when the angel says, "Hey, you're going to have a son who's going to be John the Baptist." And what happens to Zechariah? Well, he doesn't get to talk for 9 months. So. All right, so then Gideon's given his first mission by God. That's what we get here. Could someone read this for us, please?
That night the Lord said to Gideon, "Take your father's bull and the second bull, 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it. And build an altar to the Lord your God on the top of the stronghold here, with stones laid in due order. Then take the second bull and offer it as a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah that you shall cut down." So Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had told him. But because he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town to do it by day, he did it by night.
All right, again, mighty man of valor. We're going to tear down the Baal altar and remake it into an altar of God, and tear down the Asherah poles and use that as kindling for the sacrifice to God. But I'll do it, but I'll do it at night, so maybe no one will realize it's me. All right, let's keep going.
When the men of the town rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was broken down, and the Asherah beside it was cut down. And the second bull was offered on the altar that had been built. And they said to one another, "Who has done this thing?" And after that they searched and inquired. They say, "Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing." Then the men of the town said to Joash, "Bring out your son, that he may die, for he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it." But Joash said to all who stood against him, "Will you contend for Baal, or will you save him? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down." Therefore, on that day, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, that is to say, "Let Baal contend against him, because he broke down his altar."
All right. So, Gideon's not doing it at night didn't hide well, but fortunately, what he did makes his father stand up for him and things. So, again, the fact that Gideon's able to destroy the Baal altar and destroy the Asherah poles and use that for for a sacrifice to God, his father says, well, if Baal's a real God, he'll come deal with this on his own. You don't need to try and take up this fight for him. Kind of thing. So they kind of see this as proof of, that the God did it, because if Baal or Asherah were real gods, they would have done something to stop this from happening. But they didn't, so they must not be in control at this point.
Put a 7-year-old bull in one row.
Yeah. Good thing there's 10 friends with him, right? Yeah. Yep.
Question up from this is,
Okay.
now, he was from the tribe of Manasseh, right?
Yep.
Why was that tribe considered so weak? I mean, I didn't.
I mean, they're, I can't remember, I think I've got a map further up, but I mean, they're one of the half tribes, because they were, because the Levites don't get a division when they came into the Holy Land, into the Promised Land, and so Joseph's kids, they get divided up into how things go, and so Manasseh's a kind of a half tribe, so to speak, of that, and they're also among the ones furthest away, so yeah.
I was wondering if that's a bearing on him being doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, he's not from, Judah turns out to be the tribe that the kings would come from, and so they seem to do pretty well, that kind of thing. But yeah, so the Manasseh tribe wouldn't have necessarily would have been among the lower level ones.
But then he ended up being.
But at this point, God uses them.
Right.
At this point, yep. All right.
When does Dad ever notice that he was suddenly missing 2 balls?
You'd think so. Well, that's why they figured out that, well, wait, who's missing 2 bulls? Oh, they are. Yeah. I know. It's you keep track of your bulls pretty well, right?
Yeah.
You think so? Yeah. All right. All right. And again, a reminder of who Baal and Asherah are. They're a popular couple in the Canaanite pantheon. Baal's the sky deity. Asherah is the fertility goddess. So Baal means somewhat like a Zeus or a Thor, storms and rain and things, and then Asherah, the love, peace, fertility sort of thing. Worshippers sacrifice to Baal for good weather and good crops, and to Asherah for fertility and children. So as one of my commentaries said, fruitful earth and fruitful wombs, those were the elementary needs in the ancient world. So that's why they're kind of covering all their bases is, well, we'll worship Baal so we get rain, so we get good crops, and we get Asherah so we have good harvests and plenty of children, and our animals are fertile and all that stuff. But again, the rites that they do in order to do these things, cause all sorts of problems too. All right. Yeah, and then he gets this, what kind of God is Baal that he can't even plead his own cause? So they give Gideon the nickname Jerubbaal. Let Baal contend, Baal's antagonist. The Jerub idea also kind of has that idea of a defense attorney. So kind of townspeople tell Joash his son must be executed for tearing down Baal's shrine. He scoffs as if to say, are you Baal's attorney? God needs to hire a law firm. And so they call him Jerubbaal that may contend against him. After all, if a deity can't manage to rescue himself, must be a big fat failure at being a god. So, all right. And also then kind of parallels to some other events in history. Earlier this week was the commemoration of St. Boniface, one of the first missionaries to the Germans. So kind of important for us Lutherans. And part of what Boniface does is he cuts down this sacred oak tree of Thor and then builds a church out of it. And the people expect Thor to strike him down with lightning because he's cut down the sacred tree, but that doesn't happen, and so people decide, well, maybe this Jesus guy is okay. And so that's part of the story of the Christianization of Germany is because Boniface is able to do that. So, All right, any thoughts, questions, comments?
Was that before or after? That was before Martin Luther.
This was before Martin Luther, yeah. All right. So then God's calling Gideon again, so Gideon's going to ask for signs again. And so this time we're getting the sign of the fleece. Who can read this for us? Okay, Tyler, thank you.
Then Gideon said to God, "If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said." And it was so. When he rose early next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test just once more with the fleece. Let it be dry on the fleece only, and on the ground let there be dew." And God did so that night, and it was dry on the fleece only, and on all the ground there was dew.
All right. So, again, great man of faith. Let's keep asking God for signs. And he kind of even knows that he's getting into trouble. Don't let your anger burn against me, but can I get one more sign, please? Yes. So it needs a lot of encouragement there. All right. And so sometimes people then will talk about using this idea of putting out the fleece as a way to try and help determine God's will. Like tell God, okay, if I get this sign, then I know you want me to do this, and if I don't, then I know you want me to do that kind of thing. But seems to be more of an approach for people who are kind of like Gideon, who are really lacking faith to just trust in God to do what he said to do. So again, twice Gideon reminded God of what he'd said. Twice Gideon asks God to reaffirm his promises with a miracle. The fact that God stooped to Gideon's weakness only proves he's a gracious God who understands how we're made. So, the fact that God doesn't strike Gideon down, doesn't decide to pick someone else and says, "Yeah, no, I'm going to keep working with you, dealing with you, encouraging you, giving you the signs and encouragement you need to be able to do this," shows God's graciousness and mercy there. Yeah, again, who are we to tell God what conditions he must meet, especially when he's already spoken to us in his word? And it's evidence of our unbelief. It could be evidence of unbelief, also evidence of pride. God has to do what I tell him to do before I'll do what he tells me to do. Kind of backwards to how that should work. All right. Let's see. All right. Any questions on the fleece stuff?
Well, are we supposed to challenge God? No, right?
No. Right.
But Gideon kind of got away with it.
Right. Yep. So, all right.
So the key would be acting in faith.
Key's acting in faith, right, yeah.
Did Jesus ever speak of this parable, or not parable, but story?
Not that I know of, yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, Gideon gets mentioned in Hebrews 11, but I don't know that Jesus ever mentions this Gideon at all. But no, good thought, good question. All right, then so then now that he's had this fleece stuff, Gideon says, okay, fine, I'm going to raise up an army, and we're going to go fight the Midianites. And so the men, first, he seems to get a lot of recruits from his hometown that he's, the Reformation actually worked when he tore down the Baal altar and put up an altar to God. And he sends messengers through his own tribe of Manasseh, as well as the neighboring tribes of Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali. They're near the valley of Jezreel, and therefore the invading army is affecting them kind of the most. And he gets 32,000 men raised when he calls. All right, and so again, here's kind of a helpful map to show what's going on here. So again, we're up in the north part. Oh, there's the Sea of Galilee, and here's the Jordan River to kind of give you an idea. And so Naphtali, Zebulun, Asher, Manasseh, Ephraim down here. So a lot of the things happening up here, and then they end up pursuing them down this way. They cross the river, and we'll see if we have time when we get into chapter 8. Gideon asks others for help. They don't help him, and so they get smited because of that. And that's that stuff down there. All right. Any thoughts or questions on the map?
Is that in chapter 8 when it reduces his army? Or is that-
Yeah, so chapter 6 is the call of Gideon, chapter 7 is the defeat of the Midianite army, and chapter 8 is kind of the pursuit of the army and as well as, and the aftermath of that, and then what happens to Gideon towards for the rest of his life.
The size of the armies is kind of mind-boggling.
Right. Yeah, 135,000 men plus more camels than you can count is what we get. Yeah, so these are pretty giant, pretty good size armies.
Yeah, but they reduce it.
Oh, yeah, he'll reduce it, right?
So for me,
Yeah.
if I had an army of kids that were playing a game and they
Yeah.
went down to 5, I would be worried.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I mean, so 32,000 versus 135,000. I mean, you're still outnumbered 4 to 1.
Well, I thought it was 300.
And then, well, it gets cut down to 300.
Oh.
We're not there yet. So Gideon actually raises up this army. He's a good recruiter, and then God says, well, no, this 4 to 1 odds against you, that's not nearly enough. We could credit this to human effort. Yeah. Yep. This is also the first mention of camels being used in warfare in the Bible. And certainly would have given their riders speed and mobility on the battlefield. So outnumbered would be outmaneuvered, except for God's on their side and promises them victory. All right. So now we get to Gideon raising the army and starting to strike out. All right. Can someone read this for us?
Then Jeroboam, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was north of them by the hill of Morah in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, "The people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hand, lest Israel boast or be saying, 'My own hand has saved me.' Now therefore proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, 'Whoever is fearful and trembling, let them return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead.' Then 22,000 of the people returned, and 10,000 remained. And the Lord said to Gideon, 'The people are still too many. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. And any of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, shall go with you. And any of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, shall not go.' So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, 'Everyone who laps the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, you shall set by himself. Likewise, everyone who kneels down to drink.' And the number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouths, was 300 men. But all the rest of the people knelt down to drink water. And the Lord said to Gideon, 'With the 300 men who lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hand. And let all the others go, every man to his home.' So the people took provisions in their hands and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, but retained the 300 men. And the camp of Midian was below him in the valley."
All right. So how does God eventually tell Gideon to divide up? Okay, you've succeeded. You raised 32,000 men, but that's too many. This won't be miraculous yet. So first says, okay, if you're afraid, you can go home, and that leaves 22,000 leave, and so he's left with 10,000. And then he goes and watches them drink. And it's kind of confusing because you talk about lapping and kneeling and things, but it's the ones who lap like a dog, but they're lapping in from their hands, and are the ones who do, not the ones who kneel and are who kneel down. There's various explanations or guesses for why it's done that way. At least part of it seems to be that the ones who knelt aren't as alert, aren't as able to snap into action as quickly as if things happen. So that's at least one guess, one explanation. But yeah, so again, goes from 32,000 to 300. Seems like great leadership with that kind of lack of retention. But
There's only men.
only men, right? Yeah, we're talking about fighting men at this point, so just men. All right. Any other thoughts on that?
It's a big reduction.
Big reduction. Yep. All right. And so, kind of what's going on here again is he's testing them. He's refining the armies till he gets the best 300. Those who aren't afraid, and those who are afraid and those who aren't alert are sent away. So he's left with just the 300 best. All right.
That same night the Lord said to Gideon, "Arise, go down against the camp, for I have given it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down to the camp of Purah, your servant. And when you shall hear what they say, and afterward your hand shall be strengthened to go down against the camp." Then he went down with Purah, his servant, to the outposts of the armed men who were in the camp. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the people of the east lay along the valley like locusts in abundance, and their camels were without number, as the sand that is on the seashore in abundance. When Gideon came, behold, a man was telling a dream to his comrade. And he said, "Behold, I dreamed a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian, and came to the tent, and struck it so that it fell, and turned it upside down, so that the tent lay flat." And his comrade answered, "There is no other than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. God has given into his hand Midian and all the camp." As soon as Gideon heard the telling of the dream and its interpretation, he worshipped. And he returned to the camp of Israel and said, "Arise, for the Lord has given the host of Midian into your hand."
All right. So what does it tell us? That God continues to give Gideon signs. So we got the sign when the angel first appeared to him, the signs with the fleece, and now we've divided up the army, and God says, "Okay, if you're still doubting me, I'll give you one more sign. Go and scout out the camp and listen." And then here's the sentries talking about this cake of barley bread that tumbles into Midian. And again, since Gideon's threshing stuff, that kind of represents him. And what does that show us about God's patience?
Well, Gideon doesn't ask for this one, right?
What?
Gideon doesn't ask for this one.
No, Gideon doesn't ask for this one. God kind of says, "Okay, last sign, if you really want to be sure right before the battle that I'm going to give them into your hand, here we go. Go do this." And Gideon does. And so, yeah, so God's very, very patient with Gideon, a lot more than probably, we'd be patient with him. But yeah, fortunately, God's patience is better than ours. All right. And why does Gideon worship when he finally sees now God's concern for Gideon and for the people of Israel? Yeah, faith, belief. He's just finally, okay, God, yes, God is with me. God is with us. God's doing all this stuff. My response is to praise and worship him. All right, so here we get the battle. Someone read this for us.
And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies and put trumpets into their hands of all of them, and empty jars with torches inside the jars. And he said to them, "Look at me and do likewise. When I come to the outskirts of the camp, do as I do. When I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then blow the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and shout for the Lord and for Gideon."
All right, so they're going to blow their trumpets, blow their shofars, ram's horns, break some jars, raise halves and torches, And again, it's kind of in middle of the night when they're at their lowest and confused. All right. All right, can someone read this? Keep going.
So Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the outskirts of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, when they had just set the watch. And they blew the trumpets and smashed the jars that were in their hands. Then the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars. They held in their left hands the torches, and in their right hands the trumpets to blow. And they cried out, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." And every man stood in his place around the camp, and all the army ran. They cried out and fled. And when they blew the 300 trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his comrade and against all the army. And the army fled as far as Bethshitta towards Zarahemla, as far as the border of Abdul-Mahula by Tabith. And the men of Israel were called out from Naphtali and from Asher and from all Manasseh, and they pursued after Midian. Gideon sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down against the Midianites and capture the waters against them, as far as Beth-barah and all the Jordan." So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they captured the waters as far as Beth-barah and also the Jordan. And they captured the 2 princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb. Then they pursued Midian, and they brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon across the Jordan.
All right. So again, they start out here. Gideon, they encircle the army, and they flee down here and are fleeing across the Jordan River back to where they are. And Ephraim comes and surprises them too. All right. So they're using these shofars, the ram's horn, trumpet things, well-known instrument used in Israelite worship and in battle. Again, we heard last week that's the shofars, trumpets were what the Joshua and the and the Israelites blew before the walls came down in Jericho, and they make a lot of noise. So why does this work? Well, partly because God's in control, but some of the stuff, you can find in other ways. Sun Tzu, Art of War, famous Chinese military philosopher from probably 1,000 years after Gideon. But all warfare is based on deception. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must seem inactive. When we are near, we must make the enemy believe we're far away. When far away, we must make him believe we are near. So we see that part of that happening with Gideon and his men. So the Midianites don't think the Israelites have an army, and then suddenly they're surrounded. It seems like they're surrounded, and that kind of chaos and change makes them run away. And we just celebrated the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and while we focus on the landing at Omaha Beach and other places, part of why it succeeded was because of all of the deceptive campaigns that are going on, all the different intelligence things that are trying to make the Nazis think that the Allied forces are going to land somewhere else. All sorts of different campaigns there. There's even, they had inflatable tanks and things, and General Patton had an army, it was the fake army that looked like it was set to go across in Calais. Maybe a bunch of other places they were looking to as well. So then the Nazis couldn't use their forces all at Normandy, but were scattered about, made it easier for the Allies to come on. All right. Any other thoughts, questions, comments there?
The Sun Tzu word.
What?
I used that as a coach.
Yeah.
That's funny. I was laughing about it because, I
Yeah.
just was reading it, and then I used to kind of like when I get up on my thing trying to motivate them and everything, I would give them.
Oh,
yeah. It's funny you put that up there. Reflecting.
Yep, nope. All right, so now we get to chapter 8, and this is Gideon. Again, they're pursuing the Midianite army, but they run into some people who they ask for help, and they're not as helpful as they should be, and so they get smited as well. Could someone read this for us?
Then the men of Ephraim said to him, "What is this that you have done to us, not to call us when you went to fight against Midian?" And they accused him fiercely. And he said to them, "What have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abazir? God has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeb. What have I been able to do in comparison with you?" Then their anger against him subsided when he said this. And Gideon came to the Jordan and crossed over, he and the 300 men who were with him, exhausted yet pursuing. So he said to the men of Succoth, "Please give 2 loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing after Zeba and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." And the officials of Succoth said, "Are the hands of Zeba and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your army?" So Gideon said, "Well then, when the Lord has given Zeba and Zalmunna into my hand, I will flail your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars." And from there he went up to Penuel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. And he said to the men of Penuel, "When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower." Now Zeba and Zalmunna were in Karkor with their army, about 15,000 men, all who were left of the army of the people of the east, for there had fallen 120,000 men who drew the sword. Now, and Gideon went up by the way of the tent dwellers east of Nobah and and attacked the army, for the army felt secure. And Zeba and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them and captured the 2 kings of Midian, Zeba and Zalmunna, and he threw all the army into a panic. Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from the battle by the ascent of Heros, and he captured a young man of Succoth and questioned him. And as he wrote down for him the officials and elders of Succoth and 77 men, and he came to the men of Succoth and said, "Behold, Zeba and Zalmunna, about whom you have taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zeba and Zalmunna already in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are exhausted?" Then he took the elders of the city and took thorns of the wilderness and briars with them, taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city. And he said to Zeba and Zalmunna, "Where are the men whom you killed at Tabor?" They answered, "As you are, so were they. Every one of them resembled the son of a king." And he said, "They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you." And he said to Jether, his firstborn, "Rise and kill them." But the young man did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a young man. Then Zeba and Zalmunna said, "Rise yourself and fall upon us, for as the man said, as the man is, so is his strength." And Gideon arose and killed Zeba and Zalmunna, and he took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels.
All right. So again, the Midianites are fairly well scattered, but we also get, again, some of this division. The tribes are pretty much doing their own thing. They're not united under a king. And so Ephraim comes and kills the princes of Midian and slaughters them, and then tells Gideon, "Why didn't you invite us? Why didn't you call us? Look what we've done." And Gideon says, "Oh, look, you helped a lot. I couldn't have done that. You did." And then their pride's mollified, and they seem to be okay. Then again, Gideon keeps pursuing the Midianites across the river through here. He wants help from Succoth and Penuel. They say no, probably because they don't think Gideon's going to beat the Midianites, and they don't want the Midianites to come and smite them after. "Well, why do you help Gideon? You help Gideon, so we're smite you, but then Gideon wins, and so he fulfills his promises and smites them. But we also then get Gideon tries to get his son to be the one who kills the Midianite kings, but so that's asking too much of his son, so that doesn't work, and so Gideon has to kill them himself. All right. Any questions on any of that? All right. All right, then we get the end of Gideon's story, and this is kind of where, as happens with some other people in the Bible, they start off well, but don't always finish as well as they began. And so, all right, could someone read this for us?
And the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian." Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." And Gideon said to them, "Let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earnings from his spoil." For they had, earrings, I'm sorry. For they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, "We will willingly give them." And they spread a cloak, and every man threw in it the earrings of his spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescent ornaments and pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, and besides the collars that were around the necks of their camels. And Gideon made an ephod of it and put it in his city in Ophrah. And all Israel poured after it there. And it became a snare to Gideon and to his family. So Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they raised their heads to mourn. And the land had rest 40 years in the days of Gideon.
All right.
So they became jealous of him?
What?
The people became jealous of him?
Partly. So you've got first Gideon said, well, they want to make Gideon king. Gideon says, "No, God's your king, not me, not my son." So that starts off well. But then they take the plunder, melt it down, and they make an ephod, which is kind of a priestly garment, out of the gold. That was a lot of earrings if you getting 1,700 shekels of gold, but then that becomes a snare, something that leads people astray. Again, an ephod, special vestment of a priest worn over his chest, but given how it's described, probably they might have draped it over an idol, not had a priest wear it to offer sacrifices to God, and so it becomes a snare for Gideon and for the other people, because they start chasing after it instead of trusting in God. They say they hoard after it. So again, that connection between idolatry is spiritual adultery. And again, kind of that idea of good things can happen, or even things done with good intentions can become idols. And Hezekiah pops up in a few weeks, I think. But when Hezekiah renews the temple, one of the things he does is they have to break into pieces the bronze serpent. If you remember the bronze serpent on the Exodus, all people are getting bitten by snakes. And so put the snake up on a pole, everyone can looks upon it and be saved. We say with John 3:16, the Son of Man must be lifted up like that. Well, even this bronze serpent becomes an idol. It becomes used as an idol, so Hezekiah has to destroy it. Because again, it's things with good intentions can even lead people astray. Yeah, bronze serpent was supposed to point to God's mercy, but it became something that was worshipped itself instead of what it was pointing to or representing. All right, and then Gideon dies. He goes into his own house. He had 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son and called his name Abimelech, and the son of Joah. He died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of his father at Orpha of the Abiezrites. But as soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals and made Baal their god. And the people of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who delivered them from the hand of all their enemies on every side, and they did not show steadfast love to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good he'd done for Israel. So, cycle continues. All right. Any last thoughts, questions, comments?
Why is Gideon International Bibles, why did they take Gideon as...
I was going to say, our Gideons aren't here. They were at early. There were a couple were here last night. But again, they, as I mentioned in my sermon, they talked about that Gideon was a good example for them because he was a man willing to do exactly what God wanted him to do, regardless of his own judgment as to the plans and results. Humility, faith, and obedience were the great elements of his character. That's the standard they're trying to reach. So.
But it could have been called Job.
Oh, it could have been. I mean, it could have used any number of names, but yeah, that's why they chose Gideon, because they thought it was a good example of faith. So.
Except Job questioned.
Right. Well, they all question. Again, part of that idea that even as we look at these heroes of the faith, that we hear not only about their good deeds and their faithfulness, but also their flaws, their humanity, and we're reminded too that then that's God can use us even with all our flaws too.
Okay, so Gideon was his name. Is that a Hebrew name?
Yeah,
And what does that mean? Translate.
that's a good question. I don't remember off the top of my head. Google it. Yes, there we go. Yeah, because we know Jerubbaal means contends against Baal, but so. Alrighty. Well, thank you very much for coming. So, and if you haven't seen it, I did pass around the rock from Jericho. So,
But, my brother-in-law was an ELC pastor who's had a congregation member who decided that he'd like to send all of them to Israel, but couldn't afford that. So he sent my brother-in-law. So in 1990, this is one of the things he sent back was it's a piece, he says it's from the wall of Jericho near the corner tower. I mean, there's literally no way through but it's probably the right kind of book. So, if you'd like to.
We passed it.
You didn't have it, if you didn't get to see it.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
now you know the whole story.
And now it makes sense to me.
If you want to keep this thing on, you can. I'll be in there. I want and if they're not, then I'll let you guys know. So,
The difference in
yep.